The bullet sliced through the Nevada desert air at 2,700 feet per second, traveling nearly 2 miles before striking steel with a metallic crack that echoed across the wasteland like thunder. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by desert wind and the stunned gasps of men who had spent their careers believing they were untouchable. Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez lowered her rifle slowly, her weathered hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins, the same hands that had trembled with suppressed rage just hours earlier when the elite sharpshooters had laughed her off the firing line, questioning whether she even knew which end of the rifle fired bullets. Now those voices were silent, their owners staring at a scoreboard displaying a new world record in bold, unforgiving numbers. But to understand how a decorated Army veteran with a Purple Heart went from being mocked to rewriting the history books in a single afternoon, we need to go back to where it all began. Elena had always been small for her age, standing barely 5'3", even in her military boots, with the kind of unassuming presence that made people look right through her. Growing up in the hardscrabble towns of rural New Mexico, she learned early that if you wanted respect, you had to earn it the hard way. Her father, Miguel Rodriguez, was a ranch hand who supplemented his income by hunting jackrabbits and coyotes for local farmers. Every evening after school, he would take Elena out to the mesa behind their trailer, teaching her to read wind patterns and calculate bullet drop with the patience of a saint and the precision of a master craftsman. "Mia," he would say in his weathered voice, adjusting her grip on the ancient bolt-action rifle that had belonged to his grandfather. "Shooting isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about understanding the dance between you, the rifle, and the world around you. The wind tells you secrets if you know how to listen. The earth speaks to you through the soles of your feet. And your heartbeat? That's the rhythm you must learn to control." Elena absorbed these lessons like desert sand soaks up rain. By the time she was 15, she could consistently hit prairie dogs at 400 yards with iron sights, earning nods of approval from weathered ranchers who had been skeptical that a slip of a girl could handle a real rifle. Her reputation spread through the small community, and soon local hunters were seeking her out for advice on long-range shots. When Elena turned 18, the weight of her family's financial struggles pressed down on her narrow shoulders like a physical burden. Her mother's medical bills from fighting cervical cancer had drained their savings, and her younger brother needed money for college if he was going to escape the cycle of poverty that trapped so many in their community. The military offered a path forward, promising steady pay, medical benefits, and the opportunity to serve something greater than herself. The Army recruiter, a smooth-talking sergeant named Williams, initially tried to steer her toward administrative roles or communications. But when Elena mentioned her shooting background, his demeanor changed entirely. He made some phone calls, ran some tests, and within months she found herself at Fort Benning, beginning the grueling process of becoming an Army sniper. Boot camp was a revelation and a nightmare in equal measure. Elena's small stature made her a target for harassment from drill sergeants, who questioned whether she belonged in the military at all. But when the shooting portions of training began, she distinguished herself so dramatically that even the most skeptical instructors had to take notice. She qualified expert on every weapon system they put in her hands, often outscoring recruits who outweighed her by 100 pounds. Sniper school was where Elena truly found her calling. The combination of physical endurance, mental discipline, and technical precision required to be an effective sniper suited her perfectly. She excelled at the mathematics of ballistics, the art of camouflage, and most importantly, the zen-like patience required to wait for the perfect shot. Her instructors noted that she had an almost supernatural ability to read environmental conditions, often making adjustments for wind and atmospheric pressure that proved to be exactly correct despite contradicting the computer calculations. After graduating at the top of her sniper school class, Elena was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 511th Ranger Regiment, one of the Army's most elite units. For the next 6 years, she deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, conducting reconnaissance missions and providing overwatch for special operations teams. Her confirmed kill count remained classified, but her reputation within the special operations community grew steadily. Fellow soldiers spoke in hushed tones about the impossibly accurate shots she made. The hostile snipers she neutralized at distances that pushed the limits of ballistic possibility. But Elena's military career came to an abrupt end during her third deployment to Afghanistan. Her unit was conducting a sensitive operation in the Kunar province when they were ambushed by a well-coordinated Taliban force. During the firefight, an improvised explosive device detonated near her position, sending shrapnel through her left leg and causing a traumatic brain injury that left her with persistent headaches and occasional balance issues. The medical board determined that while Elena could still function in civilian life, she was no longer fit for the physical demands of special operations. She was medically retired with full honors, a Purple Heart, and a disability rating that provided a modest monthly pension. But at 28 years old, Elena felt like her life was over before it had really begun. The transition to civilian life proved more difficult than any combat mission she had ever undertaken. Elena struggled with depression, survivor's guilt, and a profound sense of purposelessness. She took a job at a sporting goods store in Albuquerque, helping customers select hunting rifles and ammunition while fighting the urge to tell them they didn't know what they were talking about. Every day felt like a betrayal of the skills and experiences that had defined her identity for so long. It was during one of these mundane workdays that Elena first heard about the Precision Rifle Championship, an annual competition that brought together the world's best long-range shooters. The event, held in the Nevada desert, featured military snipers, law enforcement marksmen, and civilian competitors vying for supremacy in various shooting disciplines. The grand prize was $100,000 and recognition as the world's best precision shooter. The customer discussing the championship was Derek Harrison, a successful defense contractor who competed as a hobby. Harrison was regaling his companion with stories of the previous year's competition, describing the elite shooters who participated and the incredible distances they achieved. As Elena listened, something stirred within her that had been dormant since her retirement from the army. "Excuse me," Elena interjected politely. "Did you say this competition is open to anyone?" Harrison turned to look at her with barely concealed amusement. "Well, technically yes, but the entry fee is $5,000, and you need to provide your own equipment. Most of the competitors are using custom rifles that cost more than most people make in a year." Elena felt a familiar fire building in her chest. The same sensation she used to get when an instructor told her she wasn't strong enough or tough enough for a particular challenge. "What kind of distances are we talking about?" "Last year's winning shot was just over 2,000 yards, Harrison replied, his tone becoming more condescending. "The world record for a competitive precision shot is currently held by Marcus Thorne at 2,647 yards. He's won the championship 3 years running." That night, Elena went home to her small apartment and did something she hadn't done since her injury. She opened the gun safe in her bedroom closet and pulled out her personal rifle. It was a custom-built system based on the Remington 700 Action, chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum, with a Night Force scope that she had purchased with her first combat bonus. The rifle represented months of careful saving and modification, each component selected for maximum accuracy and reliability. As Elena ran her hands over the familiar contours of the weapon, she felt a connection to her past self that had been missing for months. She remembered the confidence she once possessed, the unshakable belief in her abilities that had carried her through the most dangerous situations imaginable. For the first time since her retirement, she began to believe that maybe her story wasn't over after all. The next morning, Elena called in sick to work and drove out to a remote shooting range in the desert outside Albuquerque. She hadn't fired a rifle since leaving the army, and she was nervous about whether her skills had deteriorated during her time away from the profession. As she set up targets at progressively longer distances, she felt the familiar ritual calming her mind and steadying her hands. The first shot at 300 yards was slightly off-center, causing Elena's heart to sink. But as she settled into the rhythm of shooting, her muscle memory began to reassert itself. By the time she was engaging targets at 800 yards, she was consistently placing shots within a 1-inch group, accuracy that would have impressed her instructors at sniper school. Over the following weeks, Elena established a routine that gave structure and purpose to her days. She would work at the sporting goods store during the week, saving every penny she could spare, and spend her weekends at the desert range, pushing herself to longer and longer distances. She modified her rifle with a new barrel and upgraded optics, and investments that strained her budget but were necessary for the level of precision she was trying to achieve. The physical training was equally important. Elena's injury had left her with reduced strength and endurance, limitations that could prove critical during a long competition. She began a rigorous fitness regimen designed to rebuild her core strength and improve her stability while shooting. The headaches that had plagued her since the IED blast became more manageable as her overall health improved. As Elena prepared for the competition, she began researching her potential opponents. The Precision Rifle Championship attracted the world's best shooters, including active-duty military snipers, law enforcement SWAT team members, and wealthy civilian competitors with unlimited equipment budgets. The defending champion, Marcus Thorne, was a former Navy SEAL who had leveraged his military reputation into a successful career as a firearms instructor and television personality. Thorne's social media presence was carefully curated to project an image of masculine dominance and technical expertise. His Instagram account featured photos of himself with various celebrity clients, exotic hunting trips, and glamour shots of his custom rifles. In interviews, he often made disparaging comments about women in combat roles, suggesting that the physical and psychological demands of precision shooting were beyond their capabilities. The more Elena learned about Thorne and his circle of elite competitors, the more determined she became to prove them wrong. She understood that as a female veteran entering a male-dominated sport, she would face skepticism and hostility that went beyond normal competitive rivalry. But instead of intimidating her, this knowledge only strengthened her resolve. 3 months before the competition, Elena made a decision that would prove crucial to her success. She liquidated her modest retirement savings and used the money to purchase ammunition for extensive long-range practice. While most recreational shooters considered shots beyond 500 yards to be extreme, Elena began routinely engaging targets at distances exceeding a mile. She studied atmospheric conditions obsessively, learning to read humidity, barometric pressure, and wind patterns with the dedication of a meteorologist. The remote location she chose for her training was a dry lake bed surrounded by hills, offering clear lines of sight for distances exceeding 3,000 yards. Elena would arrive before dawn, spending entire days in solitude with her rifle, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with her equipment. She documented every shot in a detailed logbook, noting environmental conditions, ammunition lot numbers, and the subtle adjustments that made the difference between a hit and a miss. As the competition date approached, Elena faced a new challenge: the entry fee and travel expenses. The $5,000 entry fee alone represented nearly 2 months of her disability pension, and she would need additional money for transportation, lodging, and incidental expenses. She considered borrowing money from family members, but pride prevented her from asking for help with what others might see as an expensive hobby. Instead, Elena made the difficult decision to sell some of her personal possessions, including her motorcycle and several family heirlooms. The sacrifices were painful, but they paled in comparison to what she had already given up in service to her country. She viewed the competition not as a recreational pursuit, but as a mission that could validate her identity and prove that her military service had not been in vain. 2 weeks before leaving for Nevada, Elena received an unexpected phone call from Derek Harrison, the defense contractor who had first told her about the competition. Harrison had heard through the firearms community that she was planning to compete, and he wanted to offer some friendly advice about the level of competition she would be facing. "Look, Elena," Harrison said in a tone that was probably meant to be helpful, but came across as patronizing. "I've been following your progress at the range, and I'm impressed by your dedication. But you need to understand that this isn't like military shooting. These guys have unlimited budgets and access to the latest technology. Marcus Thorne's rifle alone costs more than most people's cars." Elena listened politely as Harrison explained the advantages that wealthy competitors enjoyed: custom barrels made from exotic alloys, computer-controlled loading equipment that produced ammunition with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, and ballistic computers that could calculate firing solutions faster than human minds could process the variables. "I'm not trying to discourage you," Harrison continued, "but I think you should adjust your expectations. Making the top 20 would be a real accomplishment for someone in your situation." After hanging up the phone, Elena sat in her kitchen for a long time, staring at the competition entry confirmation that she had printed out and taped to her refrigerator. Part of her wondered if Harrison was right, if she was being naive about her chances against competitors with virtually unlimited resources, but then she remembered the lessons her father had taught her on the mesa behind their trailer, about understanding the dance between shooter, rifle, and environment. Technology could enhance that dance, but it couldn't replace the fundamental skills that Elena had been developing for more than a decade. The flight to Las Vegas was Elena's first time on an airplane since her medical retirement, and the experience brought back memories of deployments and homecomings. She found herself studying the faces of her fellow passengers, wondering which of them had served their country and what battles they were fighting in their civilian lives. The veteran community was larger and more diverse than most people realized, filled with individuals whose military experiences had prepared them for challenges that others couldn't imagine. From Las Vegas, Elena rented a car for the drive to the competition site, a remote facility in the Nevada desert that had been constructed specifically for long-range shooting events. The landscape reminded her of training areas she had known in the military, with its endless expanses of scrub, brush, and mountains that stretched to every horizon. As she drove the final miles to the registration area, Elena felt a familiar sense of calm settling over her, the same mental state she had learned to cultivate before important missions. The competition facility was more elaborate than Elena had expected, with permanent concrete shooting benches, sophisticated target systems, and a luxury lodge for competitors and spectators. The parking area was filled with expensive vehicles and trailers containing thousands of dollars worth of shooting equipment. Elena's modest rental car and single rifle case seemed almost comically outmatched by the displays of wealth and technology surrounding her. Registration was held in the main lodge, a rustic building designed to evoke the atmosphere of an exclusive hunting club. Elena joined a line of competitors checking in with tournament officials, most of whom seemed to know each other from previous events. The conversations around her focused on equipment upgrades, recent victories, and the technical challenges of various shooting disciplines. When Elena reached the registration desk, the volunteer checking her in did a double take at her name. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, are you sure you're in the right place? This is the Precision Rifle Championship, not the women's auxiliary event." Elena felt her jaw clench, but she kept her voice level. "I'm in the right place. I have my confirmation number right here." The volunteer processed her paperwork with visible confusion, clearly unsure how to handle a female competitor who didn't fit his expectations of what a precision shooter should look like. Other competitors in line began to take notice of the delay, craning their necks to see what was causing the holdup. "Is there a problem here?" The voice belonged to Marcus Thorne himself, who had approached the registration desk with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. He was taller and more imposing than Elena had expected from his photographs, with the kind of carefully maintained physique that suggested hours spent in expensive gyms. "No problem at all," Elena replied before the volunteer could speak. "Just getting checked in like everyone else." Thorne looked her up and down with barely concealed amusement, taking in her modest clothes and single equipment case. "Well, welcome to the big leagues, sweetheart. I hope you brought your checkbook." Because the buy-in for the side bets usually runs into 5 figures, Elena met his gaze steadily. Recognizing the intimidation tactic for what it was, she had faced down hardened insurgents in Afghanistan. She wasn't about to be rattled by a peacock in designer tactical gear. "I'm just here to shoot," she said simply. Thorne's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "That's what they all say. But shooting paper targets at a country gun range is a little different from competing against the best in the world. Maybe you should consider starting with some local matches. Work your way up gradually." The registration area had grown quiet, with other competitors listening to the exchange with obvious interest. Elena realized that this moment would set the tone for how she was treated throughout the entire competition. She could accept Thorne's condescension gracefully and hope to earn respect through her performance. Or she could make it clear that she wouldn't be intimidated. "Thanks for the advice," Elena said, her voice carrying the authority she had once used to command soldiers in combat zones. "But I didn't serve 3 tours in Afghanistan to back down from a shooting competition in Nevada." Thorne's expression shifted slightly, as if he was reassessing her for the first time. Around them, several competitors exchanged glances, recognizing that the dynamics of the competition had just become more interesting. "3 tours?" Thorne said, his tone becoming slightly more respectful. "What unit?" "1st Ranger Battalion. Sniper section." Now Thorne was definitely paying attention. The 75th Ranger Regiment was known even in SEAL circles as one of the Army's most elite units, and their snipers were legendary for their skill and effectiveness. "Well, that's interesting," Thorne said, clearly recalculating his approach. "Rangers are solid soldiers. Still, military shooting and precision competition are 2 different animals. The pressure here is different, more psychological." Elena almost smiled at that. "I'll try to manage." The first day of competition featured multiple disciplines designed to test different aspects of precision shooting. Elena found herself assigned to Squad 3, which included several competitors she recognized from social media and shooting magazines. The atmosphere was collegial but competitive, with participants sharing technical advice while carefully guarding information about their specific equipment configurations. The opening event was a precision challenge at known distances, with targets placed at 600 babe and 1,000 yards. Each competitor would fire 5 shots at each distance, with scoring based on the total distance of all shots from the center of their respective targets. It was a straightforward test of fundamental marksmanship designed to establish baseline capabilities before moving to more complex challenges. Elena drew the middle position in her squad's firing order, which gave her the opportunity to observe other competitors' techniques before shooting. She noted the elaborate rituals that many followed: complex wind-reading procedures, multiple range cards with detailed atmospheric data, and shooting positions that required extensive equipment to achieve proper stability. When her turn came, Elena approached the firing line with her rifle and a simple shooting mat. Her equipment looked Spartan compared to the elaborate setups used by other competitors. Drawing skeptical looks from spectators and officials, she had no range cards, no ballistic computer, and no exotic accessories beyond the high-quality scope mounted on her rifle. The 600-yard targets were well within Elena's comfort zone, and she fired her 5 shots with the methodical precision she had learned in the military. Each shot felt natural and controlled, with her breathing and trigger control flowing together in a rhythm that was as familiar as walking. When the targets were scored, all 5 shots fell within a 3-inch circle centered perfectly on the bullseye. The 800-yard stage proved slightly more challenging due to a shifting crosswind that was difficult to read from the firing line. Elena took extra time before each shot, watching the grass and flags for clues about wind direction and intensity. Her patience paid off with another tight group that impressed even the more experienced competitors. But it was at 1,000 yards that Elena began to distinguish herself from the field. At that distance, small errors in technique or judgment were magnified dramatically, separating true precision shooters from those who simply owned expensive equipment. Elena's 5 shots formed a group that could be covered by a silver dollar, with all impacts falling within the scoring rings that designated expert-level performance. As the scores were posted, Elena found herself in 2nd place overall, trailing only Marcus Thorne by a narrow margin. The result drew surprised murmurs from spectators and competitors alike, many of whom had expected her to struggle in her first major competition. Thorne himself seemed genuinely impressed by Elena's performance, approaching her during the lunch break with what appeared to be sincere congratulations. "That was solid shooting," he said, extending his hand. "I may have underestimated you yesterday." Elena shook his hand cautiously, unsure whether his friendliness was genuine or strategic. "Thank you." It felt good to be back behind a rifle. The afternoon's events shifted to unknown distance challenges, where competitors had to estimate range to targets and make appropriate adjustments without the aid of laser rangefinders or ballistic computers. This discipline favored shooters with extensive field experience, and Elena felt confident in her abilities. The targets were placed at distances ranging from 400 to 1,200 yards, with competitors earning points for both accuracy and the speed of their range estimation. Elena's military training had included countless hours of range estimation exercises, often under pressure and in poor visibility conditions. As she studied the first target through her scope, Elena felt her mind automatically cataloging the visual cues that indicated distance, the apparent size of known objects, the clarity of details, and the way atmospheric haze affected contrast. These skills had been literally life-or-death capabilities during her deployments, and they felt as natural as breathing. Her range estimates proved accurate within 5% for all targets, and her shots reflected the precision she had demonstrated in the known distance events. By the end of the day, Elena had moved into 1st place overall, a development that sent shockwaves through the competition community. That evening's social gathering had a different atmosphere than the previous night. Elena found herself the center of attention, with competitors and industry representatives eager to learn more about her background and training methods. Some of the attention was genuine admiration for her shooting skills, but she also detected an undercurrent of skepticism from those who couldn't accept that an unknown female competitor was outperforming established champions. Derek Harrison, the defense contractor who had tried to discourage her from entering, approached with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "I have to admit, Elena, I didn't expect you to do this well, but we're only halfway through the competition. The long-range events tomorrow are where the real separation happens." Elena sensed the implied challenge in his words. "I'm looking forward to it. The final challenge is at 2,500 yards. Harrison continued. "That's beyond the effective range of most military sniper systems. You'll be shooting at targets that are barely visible to the naked eye." The second day of competition dawned clear and still, with atmospheric conditions that were ideal for long-range shooting. Elena arrived at the range early, using the extra time to study the terrain and wind patterns that would affect the day's events. She noticed that the competition organizers had positioned the longest-range targets in a valley that created complex wind currents, adding an additional layer of difficulty to an already challenging shot. The morning events progressed through increasingly difficult stages, with targets placed at 1,200, 1,500, and 1,800 yards. Elena continued to shoot with the same methodical precision that had served her well the previous day. But she could feel the pressure building as the distances increased and her margin for error decreased. At 1500 yards. Several competitors began to struggle with the technical demands of extreme long-range shooting. Wind reading became exponentially more difficult as bullet flight time increased, and small errors in range estimation resulted in complete misses. Elena watched carefully as other shooters failed to connect with targets, noting the mistakes in technique and judgment that led to their difficulties. When her turn came at the 1,800-yard line, Elena took longer than usual to prepare her shot. At that distance, her bullet would be in flight for over 2 seconds, plenty of time for wind conditions to change during its trajectory. She studied the grass and vegetation between her position and the target, looking for patterns that would indicate consistent wind direction and velocity. Her first shot at 1,800 yards missed low and to the right, a result that drew sympathetic nods from other competitors who understood the difficulty of the challenge. But Elena's military training had taught her to analyze her misses and make rapid adjustments. Her second shot connected solidly with the target, earning applause from spectators who appreciated the technical skill required for such a shot. By the end of the day's regular events, Elena maintained her lead in the overall standings. But her margin over Marcus Thorne had narrowed considerably. The defending champion had shot with increasing confidence as the distances increased, demonstrating why he was considered the world's best long-range shooter. The stage was set for the final challenge, a single shot at maximum distance, with the winner determined by whoever could make the longest successful hit. The current record of 2,847 yards had stood for 3 years, and Marcus Thorne was confident that he could extend it even further with the custom rifle and ammunition he had developed specifically for extreme range work. The final day of competition drew a larger crowd than previous events, with shooting enthusiasts and media representatives traveling from across the country to witness potential record-breaking attempts. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As word had spread through the shooting community about the unknown female veteran who was challenging the establishment's best shooter, Elena arrived at the range to find her equipment case surrounded by curious onlookers, many of whom were eager to examine the rifle that had produced such impressive results. She politely declined interviews from reporters, preferring to focus on her mental preparation for the challenges ahead. The final competition format was elegantly simple. Each of the top 10 competitors would attempt a single shot at progressively longer distances, beginning at 2,000 yards and increasing in 100-yard increments until only one shooter remained. Competitors who missed at any distance were eliminated, creating a sudden death atmosphere that rewarded both skill and mental toughness. Marcus Thorne would shoot last, a privilege earned through his consistent excellence throughout the competition. Elena had drawn the 7th position, giving her the opportunity to observe other attempts before making her own, while still facing pressure from Thorne's final shot. The 2,000-yard attempts went smoothly for most competitors, with only 2 eliminations among the field of expert shooters. Elena's shot felt solid from the moment she squeezed the trigger, and the satisfying ring of bullet on steel confirmed a successful hit. Thorne's shot was equally impressive, striking the target with authority that reminded everyone why he was the defending champion. At 1500 yards. The field began to thin more rapidly. The increased distance and corresponding bullet flight time made wind reading exponentially more difficult, and several experienced shooters found themselves eliminated by shots that missed by narrow margins. Elena studied each attempt carefully, building a mental picture of the wind conditions and how they were affecting bullet trajectories. When her turn came, Elena felt a familiar calm settling over her as she settled into her shooting position. The target appeared impossibly small through her scope, barely larger than the crosshair itself. She took extra time to read the wind indicators, noting subtle differences in vegetation movement at various points along the bullet's path. Her shot felt perfect from the moment it left the barrel, and Elena knew she had connected even before the spotter confirmed the hit. The crowd's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic, with many spectators clearly amazed that the underdog competitor was matching the established champion shot for shot. Thorne's attempt at 2,100 yards was equally successful, but Elena noticed a slight tension in his body language that hadn't been there at shorter distances. The pressure of maintaining his reputation against an unexpected challenger was beginning to show, creating mental stress that could affect his performance as the distances increased. The 2,200-yard stage eliminated 3 more competitors, leaving only Elena, Marcus Thorne, and a civilian competitor named Robert Hayes, who was known for his experimental rifle designs. The crowd had grown larger and more animated as the competition progressed, with betting odds shifting in real time as spectators witnessed the dramatic confrontation unfolding. Elena's shot at 2,200 yards required everything she had learned about reading environmental conditions and trusting her equipment. The bullet's flight time exceeded 2.5 seconds, during which atmospheric conditions could change dramatically. She waited for what felt like perfect conditions before squeezing the trigger, and was rewarded with another solid hit that kept her alive in the competition. Hayes missed his attempt by a narrow margin, leaving only Elena and Marcus Thorne to face the ultimate challenge at 2,300 yards. The distance exceeded the designed effective range of both rifles, pushing into territory where success depended as much on luck as skill. Thorne shot first, taking nearly 5 minutes to prepare his attempt. Elena watched as he consulted multiple data sources, made minute adjustments to his scope, and went through an elaborate pre-shot routine designed to maximize consistency. His shot appeared to connect, but the spotter's call was delayed, as officials used high-powered optics to verify the hit. After what seemed like an eternity, the confirmation came. Marcus Thorne had successfully engaged a target at 2,300 yards. Maintaining his position as the world's most accurate long-range shooter, the crowd erupted in appreciation for the technical achievement, recognizing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Now it was Elena's turn to attempt the seemingly impossible. As she approached the firing line, she felt the weight of expectation from hundreds of spectators who had been following her unlikely journey. The target at 2,300 yards was barely visible even through her high-powered scope, appearing as little more than a darker smudge against the desert backdrop. Elena forced herself to ignore the crowd and focus on the fundamentals that had brought her this far. She studied the wind indicators with the intensity of a meteorologist, noting subtle changes in air movement that could affect her bullet's trajectory. The desert heat was beginning to create mirage effects that distorted her view of the target, adding another layer of complexity to an already difficult shot. After several minutes of preparation, Elena felt ready to attempt the shot that would either validate her remarkable performance or end her competition in disappointment. She controlled her breathing, settled her crosshairs on the center of the distant target, and began her trigger squeeze with the smooth pressure she had perfected through thousands of practice rounds. The shot felt different from the moment it left the barrel, with a clarity and precision that Elena had experienced only a few times in her career. The bullet's trajectory seemed predetermined, as if the laws of physics were conspiring to carry it exactly where she intended. After what felt like an eternity, the distinctive sound of bullet striking steel echoed across the desert, confirming that Elena had successfully matched Marcus Thorne's achievement. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming, with spectators cheering for the underdog veteran who had refused to be intimidated by superior equipment and reputation. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction that went beyond mere competition, a validation of everything she had sacrificed and endured to reach this moment. But the competition wasn't over yet. The rules specified that in case of a tie, competitors would continue at increasing distances until someone missed. Elena and Marcus Thorne would now face the ultimate test at 2,400 yards, a distance that exceeded anything either had attempted in practice. The organizers took extra time to position targets at the new distance, using survey equipment to ensure precise measurement and placement. The crowd grew larger as word spread about the historic confrontation taking place, with many observers live streaming the event to social media platforms. Marcus Thorne's demeanor had changed noticeably as the pressure mounted. The confident swagger that had characterized his earlier performance was replaced by visible tension and careful deliberation. He spent nearly 10 minutes preparing for his shot at 2,400 yards, consulting ballistic computers and making multiple adjustments to his equipment. When he finally squeezed the trigger, the shot appeared to miss low and to the left, drawing a collective gasp from spectators who had expected another successful hit. Officials confirmed the miss after careful observation, eliminating the defending champion and leaving Elena as the sole remaining competitor. The irony of the situation was not lost on Elena as she prepared for her own attempt at 2,400 yards. She had entered the competition as an unknown underdog with modest equipment and limited expectations. Now she stood alone on the firing line, with the opportunity to not only win the championship, but also establish a new world record that would stand as testament to the power of fundamental skills over expensive technology. Elena's preparation for the record attempt was characteristically methodical and unhurried. She ignored the excitement of the crowd and the pressure of media attention, focusing instead on the environmental conditions and ballistic calculations required for success at such an extreme distance. The target at 2,400 yards was almost invisible to the naked eye, requiring maximum magnification on her scope to distinguish from the surrounding terrain. Elena spent considerable time studying the atmospheric conditions, noting how heat, shimmer, and wind patterns were affecting visibility and potentially altering bullet trajectories. When she finally felt ready to attempt the shot, Elena settled into the shooting position that had become second nature through years of training and combat experience. Her breathing slowed and deepened as she aligned her crosshairs on the distant target, trusting in the skills and instincts that had carried her through far more dangerous situations than a shooting competition. The trigger broke cleanly under her steady pressure, sending the bullet on a trajectory that would determine whether her remarkable performance would end in triumph or heartbreak. For nearly 3 seconds, Elena and hundreds of spectators waited in suspense as the bullet traveled its invisible path across the Nevada desert. The sound of impact was barely audible at such distance, but the spotter's confirmation was immediate and enthusiastic. Hit! Dead center hit at 2,400 yards. The crowd erupted in the kind of sustained applause usually reserved for historic sporting achievements. Elena had not only won the precision rifle championship, but had also established a new world record that exceeded the previous mark by over 150 yards. As Elena rose from her shooting position, she was immediately surrounded by competitors, officials, and media representatives eager to congratulate her and understand how she had achieved such an unprecedented performance. Marcus Thorne was among the first to offer his congratulations, displaying the kind of sportsmanship that separated true professionals from mere competitors. "That was the most impressive shooting I've ever witnessed," Thorne said, his earlier condescension replaced by genuine respect. "You've redefined what's possible in this sport." Elena accepted the congratulations graciously, but she was already thinking beyond the immediate achievement to its broader implications. Her victory represented more than personal success. It was a statement about the capabilities of veterans, the value of fundamental skills over expensive equipment, and the danger of underestimating anyone based on their appearance or background. The award ceremony that evening was a celebration not just of Elena's achievement, but of the entire shooting community's shared passion for precision and excellence. Elena's acceptance speech was brief and humble, acknowledging the support of her fellow competitors and the lessons learned from her military service. "This rifle and these skills were developed in service to my country," Elena said to the assembled crowd. "Today they served a different purpose, but the fundamental principles remain the same: preparation, disciplina, and respect for the challenge. I'm honored to have competed alongside such talented shooters, and I hope my performance today inspires other veterans to pursue their passions with the same intensity they brought to their military service." In the weeks following the competition, Elena's story spread throughout the shooting community and beyond. Her achievement was featured in military publications, firearms magazines, and mainstream media outlets that recognized the broader significance of her victory. Sponsorship offers poured in from equipment manufacturers eager to associate their brands with the new world record holder. But Elena was selective about the opportunities she pursued, choosing partnerships that aligned with her values and her desire to give back to the veteran community. She established a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing shooting sports opportunities for disabled veterans, using her prize money and appearance fees to fund equipment and training programs